Today, it's time to get schooled. And speaking of today, did you know that on this day, January 8th, 1918, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson announced his 14 points, an outline for peace following World War I. Before a joint session of Congress, Wilson could not have been clearer. He hoped for a new world with open covenants of peace, no secrets. He envisioned absolute freedom of the seas, along with equality of trade. Wilson hoped to reduce the arms race. He pledged sovereignty to all people groups, thus ending years of colonial rule. All territorial disputes after the war would be fairly settled. The specifics he cited in his proposal. And finally, Wilson hoped for an international body, a League of Nations, tasked with working together to make a more peaceful world. The Germans requested an armistice based solely on Wilson's 14 points. Of course, we know that the terms of the 14 points were never taken seriously. By the time Wilson landed in Paris to finalize the peace at Versailles, he was so sick, any sense of his idealism was lost. What seems to be the powerful lesson of this little tale is that we would be far better off if we actually meant what we said. No better example than Wilson's 14 points. Imagine if the 14 points were in fact followed through. The Germans were outraged at their treatment at the peace table. Seemingly, the Versailles Treaty only made certain that soon another war would rage on European soil, and it would be far worse. Or think about the Versailles meeting between Vietnamese nationalist Ho Chi Minh and Wilson's men. Men read with keen interest Wilson's promise of self-determination, the hope of casting off French imperialism. No such promise was kept. We are still paying for that war in Vietnam. French Prime Minister Georges Clemenceau, after contemplating Wilson's peace plan, said, "Mr. Wilson bores me with his 14 points. Why, God Almighty has only 10. Tragically, Wilson never stepped up to fulfill his promises. Promise me you will do better. Psst, it's Prologue with Mr. Review. It's a podcast that is actively digging tons of earth to find an ounce of gold, striving for a more perfect union.